Reed is accused of hitting John O'Keefe with her SUV and leaving him to die in the snow.
Their relationship was not a happy one.
Not a single witness actually saw this happen.
There's a whole other side of the story.
This is funny, Ms. Reed?
They've got her guilty already.
So, did you drive your car into John?
Doing this film is my testimony. I want to say what happened exactly as it happened. John was a Boston police officer. We went to the bar with a bunch of cops. Jen McCabe invited us to the Alberts. Last I ever talked to him when he got out of my car at Brian Albert's house.
Everybody liked Karen, and everything changed.
He was found dead on the lawn of another police officer.
This is one of their own, and that raises the stakes.
Miss Reed stated that she hit him 3 times. I hit him. I hit him.
I hit him.
That statement doesn't appear on any of the tapes.
They were shocked.
I am not on trial. I am a witness.
It's impossible to have any sympathy. They're all lying.
She'd smile or laugh.
She's posing for pictures.
Her behavior, in conjunction with the hard evidence, points in one direction.
DNA evidence placed parts of John on Karen's car.
Feels like I'm in a bad dream. This can't be real.
She was angry, she had been drinking.
I hate you!
How many calls?
There was over 50.
What did you text about going through Karen Reed's phone?
No news so far.
There were gasps.
One of the most uncomfortable moments of this entire trial.
Shame on you, sir.
Elle magazine wants to feature me.
She was the happiest murder defendant in America.
You're either pro Karen Reed or you are pro police.
It's become a civil war.
This justice system will never be the same after this.
I can't believe what's happening to me.
I don't want to poo-poo any opportunity that Karen Reed has to tell her own story, but these guys are rubbing me the wrong way. Let me start out with a straight-up confession. They already rubbed me the wrong way when they covered Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. They like to say that it's journalistic responsibility to cover both sides of a story, but that isn't what they did in the Depp v Heard case. They only told her side of the story. Before I get too far ahead of myself, let's just jump into the article that they wrote, and you'll see why I'm not exactly impressed. This article was written by The Hollywood Reporter by Eaton Blessing. The headline reads, Karen Reed trial doctor actor on unprecedented access with body in the snow. She's been muzzled for 2 years. Alright, you got me with the headline, let's read on. Ahead of a retrial, Investigation Discoveries Participatory Docuseries explores whether Reed reversed her SUV over boyfriend John O'Keefe or was framed to protect fellow Boston police officers involved in his death. Okay, you got us all with the sub-headline. Let's read on. Karen Reed was willing to talk about why boyfriend John O'Keefe was found dead on a fellow Boston police officer's front lawn in January 2022, even before her first trial in 2024 ended in a mistrial. As her retrial on second-degree murder and manslaughter charges is set to begin April 1st, Investigation Discovery is releasing A Body in the Snow, the trial of Karen Reed, a docuseries that closely follows Reed and her legal team behind the scenes during the first trial. Doing this film is my testimony. This has happened to me. I know what happened between John and me, Reed tells director Terry Dunn Muir of Unsolved Mysteries early in the series. Speaking to The Hollywood Reporter, Muir explains that the access she and her camera team got to Reed and her attorneys was surprisingly comprehensive. At first I thought, I hope they really mean what they're saying. You know, can we be in the car? Can we be in the war room? Can we be in your hotel room? And it turned out they really did allow us to, sick. The access was incredible, really unprecedented, Muir recalled. ID President Jason Solanas adds that the competing legal claims of Reed's first trial, a toxic romance ending in either a murder or a frame-up, underscore the journey of one woman against a system that continues to capture national attention. I think Karen's struggle through this multi-week process is so daunting, and the level of openness to share that struggle with the world is what makes this project so interesting for potential viewers, Solanas tells THR. A Body in the Snow, the trial of Karen Reed, produced by Unsolved Productions for Investigation Discovery, airs on ID and streams on Max over 3 nights starting March 17th, with a 1-hour finale on March 19th. Below, Muir and Solanas say Reed hasn't been able to fully tell her story until now. She's never felt like she could tell her entire story from beginning to end. So now we begin the interview between Eaton and Terry. Eaton asks, "Why do a docuseries on Karen Reed?" Terry replies, "Actually, this project came to me. I had only heard briefly about Karen Reed. The attorneys representing Karen Reed were looking for someone to follow them through the pre-trial and trial process. So I quickly did some research about the case, and I was amazed at how there were 2 strong sides to this case. I hopped on a Zoom with Karen and Alan Jackson, and 3 weeks later I was in Boston and we were filming." Right there I have to just stop and say there's a weak side and there's a strong side. Pretty sure there's not 2 strong sides here. But hey, that's more than Johnny Depp got from The Hollywood Reporter. Eaton goes on, "You were promised access to Karen Reed. Were you surprised by how much access you got?" Terry replies, "What excited me about the project was the access. At first I thought, I hope they really mean what they're saying. Can we be in the car? Can we be in the war room? Can we be in your hotel room?" And it turned out that they really did allow us to. The access was incredible, really unprecedented. Eaton asks, "Why were you given this unprecedented access?" Terry replies, "In the documentary, Karen answers that actually. She says, 'This is my testimony.' Karen liked to talk, and she's been muzzled for 2 years. She's done a few interviews here and there, but she's never felt like she could tell her entire story from beginning to end. And that's what she wanted to do. I think she knew she probably wasn't going to be asked to testify on the stand. I doubt her attorneys will let her do that because that's rare. I think she just wanted to tell her story." Eaton goes on, "Jason, you typically have a higher purpose to your ID docuseries. What drew you to this project?" Jason replies, "From our vantage point as the originating home of true crime television, we see every single type of documentary series. It is uniquely rare to see a project with this level of access, this level of intimacy that Terry was able to secure. Part of the purpose of being a platform for this documentary is to demonstrate for people who are going through the emotional drama of their own dealings with the courts and legal battles. This is such an example of that on such a high level. We do think our viewers can take away from this what it would be like to go through that because of this level of access." Eaton goes on, "This case turns one woman, an outsider, against an apparent blue wall of silence in a Boston home where it's unclear whether an alleged murder took place. Is that one of the appeals here, the story of a lone woman against the system?" Jason replies, "I think Karen's struggle through this multi-week process is so daunting, and the level of openness to share that struggle with the world is what makes this project so interesting for potential viewers. Questions of potential corruption in the system, the issues, frankly, with drunk driving. There are so many different layers to this 5-part documentary series, but I think the core one-woman struggle against the greater system is absolutely one of the perspectives we found so interesting." So Jason actually understands why we're watching the trial and what it is that captured our attention, and that is precisely why he decided it was a good story to cover. Then Terry adds, "One of our reporters, Ted Daniel, says this is about Karen Reed, almost rather than John O'Keefe, but he says this is so much bigger than Karen. I think he's really right about that. I've never seen a case that has divided a town like this has, destroyed friendships and families. People can't even talk about it. That's weird, Terry, because there's dozens and dozens of people talking about it on YouTube at the moment. As one of the people in the film says, you're either pro Karen Read or you're not pro Karen Read. One of the things that attracted me to the story is that there are two very, very strong theories on both sides of the case. The prosecution has really interesting points to make, and the defence has really interesting rebuttals. I've not seen a case either where there's so much suspicious behaviour on both sides. Both sides had so much to work with, using that to create reasonable doubt. Sorry to inform you, Terry, the prosecution's job is to prove their theory beyond reasonable doubt. It's the defence's job to create reasonable doubt. This is the way it is across all common law countries, Terry. Jason goes on, this story can only be told now because in a post-social media environment, this is really a commentary on both sidesism and tribalism, the way it has divided the New England area. Clearly, Jason and Terry did not see the stats that we saw. This is literally the people in that house and their friends and family versus the whole freaking world. This is about where we go downhill. Eaton says, the series clearly shows that Karen Read and her team used social media to turn the case to their advantage with national attention. These people are acting like they're the prosecution. You're not allowed to talk about your own case to the public. Only if you live in North Korea. Terry says that was a defence strategy. Karen, in the film, talks about how there wasn't much buzz about this case in the traditional media. So they reached out to independent journalists, hoping they could light a fire under this. And they were very instrumental in creating the social media dialogue, vitriol, if you will, that is this case. We call them the pinks and the blues. The pro-Karen Read people wear pink, and the people that support John O'Keefe and his family and friends, and the prosecution side, they wear blue. Like I said, it's all downhill from here. They seem to miss the concept that we support John O'Keefe and Karen Read because justice is not mutually exclusive. They're also missing the point that if you're going to go up against the system, then you need this publicity. Even the AI says that. There's no other way to battle corruption. Eaton goes on. Besides following Karen Read and her team, the series does a lot to keep O'Keefe, the deceased, in the frame by interviewing friends. Listen, the only people making the argument that John O'Keefe is forgotten in all of this are the people who killed him and those who are covering up for them. Terry replies, it was so important in putting this film together to keep John O'Keefe, the victim in this case, a presence in the series, because it's about John. It's a freaking murder trial where John got murdered. It's all about John. Oh my God, these people. Everyone would tell you he's a great guy, a great cop, a great dad to his sister's kids, and he's gotten so lost in this. Everyone on both sides, and nobody on this side is saying that he's lost because it's about him. He was the one who was murdered. That's why it was so important to bring his friends into it, to keep him as a presence with loyal friends. I'm sorry, Terry, loyal friends don't stick up for his murderer and try to cover it up. The case is complicated. Only for you, Terry. The rest of the world can see it black and white. It's easy just to debate the issues, the evidence in the case and the witnesses, but we really need to not lose sight of the fact that it's about a wonderful man who is now dead. Yeah, that's why it's called a murder trial. For Pete's sake. Jason responds, projects like this are told from a singular side, and while Terry got incredible access to Karen and Karen's team, the way she has folded part of John's extended loved ones in is critical to creating the balance that we think makes the show. In English, he means we're doing PR for the prosecution too, you know. Eaton now goes on, returning to social media, we assume ID Docuseries have to follow certain journalistic tenets, be factual, show both sides. Pah! says the Hollywood Reporter. Of all freaking media outlets, the Hollywood Reporter would not tell Johnny Depp's side of the story. But yeah, be factual and show both sides. But online, early on, we're introduced to Turtle Boy, dun dun dun, who grandstands on social media and says whatever he wants with no accountability. I'm sorry, did you miss the 60 days he just spent in jail? Freaking morons. Terry replies, "We didn't do an interview with Turtle Boy. We wanted to include him because he is part of the story. But there's a side part of his story. He's facing 16 counts of witness intimidation. He has his own case going. He's being prosecuted, which tells you he has crossed the line." I can't with these clowns. "Which tells you he's crossed the line to have these charges levelled against him. That was the point, Terry." Oh my god. Guilt by association. Even the AI picked up on that one. But he's an independent journalist and isn't held to the same standards as all the other reporters we included in the series. Oh, you mean all those reporters who said that there was clear-cut footage of Karen Read running over John in the early days? Those reporters, what standards are they held to? He can say and do whatever he wants. It's the collateral damage. This is a very personal opinion that he's done in terms of the lives of these witnesses, who are just witnesses. As Jennifer McCabe says on the stand, "I'm just a witness." It's really concerning and disturbing. What's concerning and disturbing, Terry, is that you don't see Jennifer McCabe's 2:27 a.m. search as suspiciously as we do. You know, the rest of the world that your program is supposedly for. Go ahead, Jason, bury yourself. He says, when you look at the wild, wild west that is social media and influencer culture, there's no accountability. And that's why we do these projects the way we do them, with the depth and multi-part exploration, so that we can give space to commentary on just that. What Jason is actually saying here is that the very few people involved with the murder who are trying to cover up the murder aren't getting the PR that they need. If we just give them more PR, she'll get convicted. Terry pipes up with, "I think the word accountability is the key word. There's no accountability. That's frightening and wild, wild west. You're using a great phrase, because what is going on?" Well, Terry, let me spell it out for you in Elon Musk's own words. We are now the journalists. That stinks for you, doesn't it? Eaton asks, is this lack of accountability due to social media or a breakdown of communication in the public square today? Listen, guys, do you even live in the real world? You do realise that nobody listens to you anymore? Nobody's got any confidence in what you've got to say anymore. And the more you go about denying it, the less people trust you. That's how it is. It's time to wake up and smell the roses. Terry replies, Turtle Boy is getting a lot of clicks and he is making a lot of money off this situation. Oh, so the Hollywood Reporter and ID are going to get no money from this situation? Is that why you're doing the story? To do it for free? To serve the public? She goes on, trial number 1 and now heading into trial number 2. There's financial and exposure gain for him, and Turtle Boy isn't the only one. A lot of the bloggers are hopping on, as it's about money and clicks. Are all the Deppies out there rolling their eyeballs right now? Because this is what they did in the Depp v. Heard trial, right? It was all about complaining about the money and the clicks because nobody believed her. It's all about the money and the clicks. She goes on, but Turtle Boy is tapping into something. All these people are following him. He's almost like a cult leader. Dun dun dun! And then after that comedic drivel, she actually says the most sensible thing she's going to say throughout the whole interview. He's tapping into something, especially in the Karen Read case, this idea that the system is corrupt and we're not going to take it anymore. No shit, Dick Tracy. I don't suppose it occurred to you that we've been saying this since long before Turtle Boy come along and the Karen Read case. Your publications and your docuseries have been filling the airwaves with drivel for so long that nobody wants to listen to you anymore. You're supposed to be on our side, You know, the people, the fifth estate, that keeps the government in check. And the only reason you're chucking a hissy fit is because the people won't listen to you anymore. Anyway, Eaton goes on, with all unscripted doc-series, there's the question of where to end. The first trial ended in a mistrial. What did that mean in wrapping up this 5-parter? Terry says, I know everyone on the defence team was very surprised that they did not get an acquittal. I think they thought that when the jury went out to deliberate, they were going to come back in a couple of hours, or certainly by that day. The whole world did, Terry, because we saw the evidence and the mountains of reasonable doubt. She goes on, then another day goes by, another day goes by. You could see them start to get pretty nervous and to start to consider the idea that this might be a mistrial. What it did, in terms of our focus on the project, the prosecution, the district attorney's office, immediately announced that they were going to retry the case. And we would always want to make a balanced presentation of both sides, the prosecution and the defence. But I think it became even more important because this project is going to air before the second trial begins. No, you're airing it the day it begins. And we don't want to feel like we have swayed anyone in one direction or another. I don't know how they're going to find a jury that hasn't heard about this case. If we get as many viewers as we hope we will, then a lot of them might have seen this show. Oh, so you want to show both sides, but you literally are trying to sway the jury. Otherwise you'd be holding it off until after the second trial, wouldn't ya? To which Eaton asks, have you made a decision on whether to make another series about the second trial? Obviously not, because their whole aim here is to sway a jury, right? Terry replies, right now we're not planning on going back, but Jason and I can chat about that later. Karen came to us because she wanted to tell her story, but we had to interject D.A. Morrissey's into her story as well, you know, just so that the jury doesn't get swayed. Terry goes on, and we feel like we did that thoroughly in this series of 5 episodes. Her story would be the same in a second trial. There's some new players, there's a new prosecutor, and 3 additional defence attorneys. There's some new evidence, some new witnesses. Yeah, sounds like a completely different trial to me. I feel like it would be a little repetitive. I don't know, Jason, what do you think? Jason says, I would say to Terry's credit as a filmmaker and the incredible team she surrounded herself, this 5-part documentary feels very complete. The viewer goes on such an emotional roller coaster, and I do believe, even though it ends the way it ends, you get a sense that it is the end of that particular part of the journey. Except that part of the journey is still going because we now have the habeas petition. The other thing that we pride ourselves on is embracing and empowering agency in subjects. Karen approached Terry. If Karen were to come back and want to tell more story, of course, I think both Terry and myself would be open to hearing how that would work, but that's really in Karen's hands. I would say the fact that you couldn't let Karen just tell her story and you had to interject D.A. Morrissey's story with it probably indicates she's not going to come back to you. You can't promise someone to tell their story and then not let them tell their story. Terry, you followed the first trial with your camera. If you don't do a series about the second trial, do you look forward to just watching it like everyone else as a spectator? Terry, absolutely. I cannot wait. I'm so excited actually to see what happens because I'm so invested in these characters. Really, Terry? You're not gravely concerned because of the corruption that's going on here? Do go on, Terry. And now there are some new characters, and there's going to be some new strategy on part of the defence, because they did not get an acquittal, they did not create reasonable doubt, or enough reasonable doubt to get an acquittal, which means their third-party culprit defence strategy didn't work. I don't think you get how this works, Terry. The prosecution didn't get a conviction, which means that they did create reasonable doubt. Bloody hell, I can't with these people. She goes on, so what's their new strategy going to be? I can't wait to see. I think what would interest me the most about going back would be to cover if there is a verdict and if there's another hung jury. I doubt that they're going to retry it. Clearly you don't know Massachusetts as well as we do. I don't know about you guys, but this whole thing just seems extremely disingenuous. Their initial message is like, it's just show business, it's not about the money and the views. Meanwhile, they stress all the way through about the views, and obviously what comes from that is the money. And then they sort of go on, oh, this is a really good story because we can see that the audience is riveted. They've been captured by the level of corruption in this case. But we're not going to talk about the level of corruption in this case. In fact, we're going to interject D.A. Morrissey's defences against the corruption in this case. They say, we're going to let Karen have her testimony, but it's no longer her testimony. It's now a big story that nobody's really interested in because it's not highlighting the corruption in this case. They even tell you flat out, their focus is the prosecution retrying the case, not Karen telling her story. And the both sidesism, isn't it awful? But you know, we've got to inject the both sidesism because otherwise it's totally one-sided. There's no tribalism. We literally need more tribes on the side of the prosecution because, you know, the Commonwealth deserves a fair trial too. It's just so disingenuous. They promised to give Karen agency so that she could tell her story, but they couldn't help themselves. They just had to play the both sidesism and the tribalism. Well, I can tell you one thing, I ain't gonna be watching it. It was us. It was Turtle Boy, the influencers, the YouTubers, the TikTokers. We put the word out there. And no, cult followers don't fact-check their leaders. None of us took Turtle Boy's word for anything. We all fact-checked him. And you want to know the point where his following blew up? It was the point where everything he said came out in trial. The day that Bev and the prosecution dragged Tim Bradle into that courtroom, they literally quadrupled his following. At some stage, the washed-up media has to accept that they have done this to themselves. They stopped representing the people. They stopped being the Fifth Estate. They turned it into tribalism, just as they are going to do with Karen's story. And let me leave you with one last thought. Have they told Johnny Depp's story yet? Have they gone into detail about the emotional and physical abuse that he suffered at the hands of Amber Heard? Have they advocated for men in domestic violence relationships yet? No, and they never will. It's us. It's the independent journalists and the social media influencers who have done that because the media no longer represents the people. Do you hear us now, Terry and Jason?